So the next movie that I want to talk about is Craig Gillespie's Dumb Money. It's the ultimate David versus Goliath tale based on the insane true story of the everyday people who flipped the script on Wall Street and got rich by turning GameStop, the video game store, into the world's hottest company. Now, if you remember during COVID, there were all of these meme stocks. There were a bunch of Redditors on Wall Street bets that were basically betting against the hedge funds in the stock market. And it kind of created this microscopic bubble burst that we haven't seen the likes of before or since. And so it was a movie that had a lot to tackle in terms of telling the broader story of how this came to be. If you all saw The Big Short, it kind of dives into the market a little bit, kind of makes it a little bit basic so that people can pick up on all the intricacies of investing in the stock market and kind of how everything works. It doesn't lean into that nearly as much as I thought it would. This is mostly just a story, a vignette almost, of everyday people whose lives were changed when Keith Gill was able to captivate an entire Reddit and internet community to essentially go after these hedge funds who were betting against a stock that he felt like there was a lot of value in. And it's got a stacked cast. I mean, Paul Dano, Pete Davidson, America Ferrera, Vincent D'Onofrio, Nick Offerman, Anthony Ramos, Seth Rogen, Sebastian Stan, Clancy Brown's in here a little bit, and then you also have Shailene Woodley. In this movie, a lot of people in my circle of friends and colleagues didn't actually like it. They were giving it 5s and belows. Meanwhile, its critical consensus isn't that bad, and so I was confused on that divide there, but nonetheless, I digress. For me, I like the movie. I like it. I think that there is something snappy about it. A lot of people were comparing it to Adam McKay's style, and while it's very, very similar, I think this is meant to be more fun for the everyday viewer. And so it's not as heady, it's not as bombastic in some cases as an Adam McKay movie would be. It's just kind of riding the wave of average a little bit, but I think it's to its benefit. And also how the movie handles the COVID-19 era, I think is really unique because every filmmaker has a different take. You know, some people were adamant not to even touch it with their properties during COVID, like television shows and movies at that specific time or shortly thereafter. Either chose to ignore it or to kind of lean into it further than you would have thought possible. This one kind of stays in that middle ground, respecting the time period that the story is based on because it really happened, but also not making it as serious or as intense. And it's used here as kind of like a crutch almost for some really fun needle drops in music. Personally, I went to the theater. I was the only one in there during all of the previews, during all of the trailers, and then an old couple came and sat behind me. And there's a specific needle drop that happens at the beginning of the movie with Seth Rogen that I thought that they were going to walk out of. I really did. They didn't. But it was very, very possible because I've seen it happen before. But they continue to do this thing where it's like dredge up the past, but not in a way that feels like it's not benefiting the story. Instead, this movie's really focused on the everyday lives of people who kind of took on that meme stock and invested. Everyday, ordinary Americans who otherwise would have no interest or no capability of investing in the stock market. And this kind of guise over the American people, the everyday public, the working class more so, that don't even know it exists basically because they've never had the tools or the education to really understand how the markets work. And so that's really the angle of this film. And when you pair that with tracing over what happened during the COVID-19 pandemic, it creates this interesting combo where it feels light and fluffy, but also empowering. And that's what I came to love about this movie. Ultimately, it feels empowering, regardless of how you feel about how everything turned out with the Robin Hood app, with the kind of insider knowledge and the insider blockade that was presented during the GameStop meme and also shortly thereafter. Because there's still a lot of work to be done. Congressional hearings still need to happen. There were a couple of lawsuits, you'll find out at the end of the movie, that were dropped, even though it was very clear that they were rigging the system against the everyday person. And so I feel like this movie is one to go in and just have fun with it. Just have fun with being in that era without the feeling of overwhelming existentialism that was that time period. Go into it with a clear mind, go into it with no expectations, and I think you're going to have a good time with this, because I certainly did.